Until noon, this is Neil Mitchell.
Now, this is a different sort of interview for this time of day. I've got 3 police in the studio with me, which is rare enough, but they're all part of the same family. You might remember I spoke to Superintendent Craig Gillard a couple of times overseas western region of Victoria, and I've talked to him about crime in Geelong. In August, we were talking about a very scary case down at Wyndham Vale where a car, BMW, was stolen with a 5-year-old child inside. All ended well, fortunately, but I made a comment that day, given his reaction to the trauma for the child. He must be a father. Well, he is. He has 2 daughters with him in the studio who both followed his footsteps into the force. Superintendent Craig Gillard, good morning.
Good morning, Neil.
Senior Constable Madeline Gillard, good morning.
Good morning, Neil.
And Detective Senior Constable Jamie Gillard, good morning.
G'day.
G'day.
Hello.
So when do you call him sir?
Never.
What about at work?
No, he's our dad. That's it.
He doesn't stop being dad just when he puts them in the uniform.
Yeah, but you've got, well, okay. Have you worked together?
No.
Oh, this is a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah, we like to keep it that way.
Tell me, Maddie, when did you first become aware your dad was a police officer? Can you remember?
I think I can remember being in kindergarten using art smocks that were old police shirts. And I didn't sort of see that that was anything special, but a lot of the other kids in kinder thought that that was pretty cool that I'm wearing uniform, and I think I sort of became more aware of it then, that it was a bit of a talking point.
And Jamie, what about you? Do you remember? Well, you'd sort of grow up, he's always a police officer.
Yeah, I actually don't have any memories like that. I remember maybe when we lived in Halls Gap for some time out at Fines, Lake Fines, they had a police do at Christmas time, and Santa would come and give us all presents, and yeah, there were, lots of police members and their kids there, so that was probably the first real memory.
And why did you want to be a police officer yourself?
I don't know, just growing up with it. Dad obviously came home, would tell a couple stories, and it was always exciting, and every day is new experience, and you're always learning, which is great.
And what about you, Maddie?
I think just the variety that it offers. You work, obviously starting on the divisional van and responding to triple O calls and working the watch house and custody and whatnot. But after you sort of learn your trade in general duties, the possibilities are endless. You can go into the detective stream, which obviously Jamie's done and I am aiming to do, and that's only one of the countless things that you can go into.
Craig, I spent a lot of my son's early years trying to convince him not to be a journalist. I succeeded. It was probably a silly thing to do because I think he's probably suited to it. Did you ever think the kids would be police officers?
I've got to say, I didn't think for a minute that they would be. And a little story behind it. I was actually managing recruiting at the time for VicPol. Pardon me. And Jamie, our eldest, had gone off to uni and got a degree or two and had a really good job at the local water board where we were living. And my wife and I had a couple of months long service leave, and we were actually touring around Western Europe. And I remember the day we were in a motel in Paris, and of course the text went off at about 4 a.m. because the kids don't care what time it is. And Jamie texts and says, "Dad, I'm joining the job, joining the police force." So I just text back, "No, you're not," and turn the phone off. And,
that's encouraging.
Yeah, that's true.
So then by the time we didn't have so there'd never been a conversation. We got home from Europe and I said, what was the go with that text? And she said, I've applied, I've gone through the process. The only thing left to do is the interview. And I said, well, why wouldn't you tell me that? She said, oh, well, you're in charge of recruiting. Everyone would say, I got a leg up or whatever. So I waited till you went overseas. So
that's
true.
How
it all happened.
Well, you responded well when he said, no, don't do it.
Yeah, so I did it. Yeah.
Did you mean no, don't do it, Craig? Did you really?
I think probably early was that little bit of trepidation, just the father figure, regardless of what your kids do, you're sort of mindful of their safety, and it, it can be a daunting job at times. It's not everybody loves us, as you know. Probably having 2 girls, I might have been a little bit overcautious, I suppose. I don't have any issues now. They're well trained, well skilled, got a great team of colleagues around them that know their business. They all support each other, so I'm very comfortable with it now. But I've got to say, early doors, I was probably a little concerned. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I think the average person, if their child became a police officer, at least initially, would worry a lot. Being a police officer might make you worry more or less. Do you think, with your background, you know what happens?
I think especially early, they've been in a few years now, and you become a little more confident with their skill set, the way they talk and the things that you hear that they do. There's certainly possibilities there that you don't like to think of, and I'm sure their mother's probably a little more like that, but I'm probably more comfortable with it now.
I read in a Ballarat paper, Jamie, you actually did a shift with your dad, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I did a shift on the van with Dad when I first graduated. We actually got a big job that shift, and at the end of it, 8-hour shift, Dad went home, and I think I was stuck at work for another 10 hours overtime doing paperwork, and Dad did not care at all. He was out the door at the end. And
we have a term for that, Jamie. It's called rank has its privileges.
yeah, certainly. Yeah, did that day anyway.
No sense two of us doing the overtime.
No.
It's an economical decision.
They're always the same at the top, aren't they?
Yes.
And there are more of you. You have a husband and there's an uncle in blue as well?
That's correct. So my husband, Chris, he's at the Family Violence Task Force. He really enjoys it there and something he's quite passionate about. And we have other family members in the job also. Yeah, so it's certainly not uncommon, is it, to have large families in the police force. There's many of us floating around.
Wouldn't call us a large police family, but you're probably aware of this. There's quite a few almost dynasties, but large police families within the organisation. I think it's some of the things that you spoke about. You see what your family does and the variety that Maddie spoke about, and no 2 days are the same. It's never boring. I think that becomes a little enticing for some other family members.
I've talked to Ron Iddles at length about how he was never home, and he had this sort of a bit of a guilt thing as a father because he was doing a lot of jobs over the years, but particularly in the homicide squad, and a lot of time on call and going away for days on end on investigations. Did you feel that when the kids were little?
Yeah, I think I'd go so far as to say there wouldn't be a police member that I know of that doesn't carry some guilt around that. Missed a lot of birthdays, and socially I think you miss a few things through the shift work and that sort of thing, and you can be away for periods of time with a whole range of things, whether it be work or courses and those sorts of things. So, but it's a bit of give and take. The thing that you do need is obviously I've got a wife who's just the best police wife going around, totally understanding and has been really good around that.
How do you maintain, though, in that sort of those levels of absence? How do you maintain a good relationship with the family, with the kids?
When you're not working, you just put in the time. Just simple as that. So I've always been a bit of a family man and tried to be there when I can.
Very hands-on. Used to throw the tennis ball back and forth in the backyard in Halls Gap for hours on end. I'm sure it was boring for him, and lots of good memories as well, having Dad around. And when we were fortunate, I suppose, in Halls Gap, we lived in the police house for many years, so the office was right next door, so he could wander across at times.
And what's the future?
Well, I'm going to be applying for detective jobs soon, so my team's really supportive of that. At Wyndham, they're helping me get some good jobs under my belt to get the experience. That I aspire to be a detective like Jamie, which Dad never did. He says he was never smart enough. Yeah.
Yes. When did you ever meet a smart detective?
Well, we've read his cadet reports, and they're not favourable.
But what?
It was a long time ago.
Despite the skipping team.
Yes.
Amazing how that sort of stuff gets stretched up.
The crowning glory of the
82,
skipping team.
1982 Victorian Police skipping team. Well done.
Thanks.
A highlight for you.
Highlight of my career, obviously.
just finally, when you get together, do you talk shop? Do you talk police?
Very rarely.
Very, very
Not
rarely.
too much. Generally, when they walk in the door, there might be one or two, although they're not at home, but it might be one or two things early, but generally not. No, it is just a job, albeit it's one that does have an impact on your life and an impost on it, if you like, but we try not to talk shop too much.
Even after a particularly bad day?
Particularly bad day if the girls have had a couple of things that they've spoken to me about over the journey, threats to themselves in terms of physical harm, or they've been assaulted or been in some pretty hairy situations. We generally talk those through, and it's all part of the recovery. And as you're aware, the police force has gone through a mental health review recently, and we're really keen to keep people talking about things and make sure you air them and don't bottle them up. So I've told the girls there's nothing that they can't talk to me about.
Well, Maddie, how long have you been in the job?
4.5 years.
And Jamie?
since 2010.
6 years. And Craig?
Oh. 1979, I joined cadets as a 16-year-old kid from Mildura.
And that the reason I asked, we talked a lot about respect and whether the respect to the officers is reducing, is waning. There've been a significant increase in the number of people charged with resisting arrest or hindering police, that sort of thing. It's a 150% increase in a year. Yeah. Have you seen respect to the uniform change significantly in your time, Craig?
Yeah, I think it's certainly diminished over the journey. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think it's only for the uniform. I think it's respect for a whole range of things. You see a diminished respect around respect for people's opinions, values, property, way of life, a whole range of things. I think it all gets down to that one word of respect, and I think that's probably what we're lacking a bit in the community at the moment. Whole other discussion. I know you're probably the world according to Craig Gillard, but I think there is a lack of respect throughout the community.
Jamie, what about you? Have you seen it change in your 6 years?
A little bit, yes. Yeah. Initially, people you'd give them a direction and they would listen to, but people are a lot more likely to challenge you now and not listen to you. So it's just an issue that we've got to deal with.
Maddie, in your time?
Not so much in my time. I've not been in as long, obviously. But as Jamie said, it's just people challenging your directions, and in the perfect world of training scenarios, you tell someone to do something and they do it, and it very infrequently pans out that way. So you've just got to be thinking on your feet, and that that your offside has always got your back, and those sorts of things. So. You can get through it.
Well, it's great to meet all of you, and I wish you well.
Thank you.
Craig, you'll be winding up soon, I suppose.
In career-wise?
Yeah.
Probably after this interview and the skipping video by this week or so. I've got a few years left under me.
That's
me
good.
yet. Yeah.
And obviously these two young women have got a long career ahead, both of you. I wish you well, and thanks so much for coming in.
Well,
Great
thank
to see
you for having us. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Neil.
Craig Gillard, Madeline Gillard, Jamie Gillard, the Victoria Police.